the conversations that we've had so far, I'm sure you know, are largely about everything that's going on right now in football. And I want to talk to you about the star. I want to talk to you about everything that's going on. I got to start by asking you, at this moment in football, you have the privileged position of being, atop one of the most valuable, but also most important and influential brands. What does football need to be thinking about right now?
I think everyone goes through certain inflection points along the way of any successful journey that you have. And in that, I've always felt like sports have been the biggest roller coaster. Certainly they have been for our family, which means that the highs are never higher, but the lows are also never lower. And in that, you have to own full responsibility for the full thread of that ride. And for us, for our sport, certainly for the Cowboys, and I would think for all of the NFL and all sports, is that we stand up and ask for the visibility. We reach out and try to magnify the number of eyeballs that are looking at us at any one time. And when you do that, you have to accept the responsibility that comes with that scrutiny and comes with that visibility. And we have always truly believed that it is a privilege, not a right, to work, coach, or play with the Dallas Cowboys. And in that, you have a responsibility to community. And that doesn't just mean going out and helping others become better versions of themselves. It means that you have a place in society that whether you like it or not, you're going to be viewed upon and judged upon by your behavior. And, let's face it, our teams, our locker rooms, our organizations, we are a slice of society. So if it's going to happen in society, it's going to happen in our locker room, and it's going to happen in our organization. And it's not that we should be judged by if it happens, but we should be judged by what we do when it happens. And because all of us are going to face any of these issues that we are dealing with today. And what you want to do is try to figure out how you put your best foot forward in making sure they don't happen again, or that you can course correct internally to make sure that you are doing the best that you can to create an environment where everybody is bringing the best version of themselves to the table every day.
And so as you think about that responsibility, which I think you stated very well, both as an organization and also as a member of a community, I know diversity is something you think a lot about within the organization. What are the conversations and what is the sense of urgency at this moment, do you think, among your peers and among the league to make some real change going forward?
I think the first thing out of everyone's mouth is we must do better. I don't think perfection is actually an option in any of the social issues that we all face together. We don't live in a perfect society, and we never will. So how do we make progress towards perfection? And how do we mark those milestones of acknowledging that is this actual progress or is it not? And I think sometimes we can get caught in looking at something and saying, oh, this feels like progress to me. This feels like progress, when actually it's not. And we need to do something better, something more founded, something stronger. But I know, and I can't speak for everybody, I can't speak for the approach that every team has individually, and when the doors are shut, what happens? But I know from our standpoint is that there are real conversations happening across every department in our organization, happening in coaching, happening in the locker rooms, happening in the boardroom, of we have to get this right, but what does right look like?
Right.
And how can we do better as an institution and organization to make sure that we are allowing the opportunity to progress in a positive way?
Yeah.
And present that to others. And that's a challenge. You've heard the commissioner stand up all week and say, we don't do this well. We must do better. And I think there is an earnest desire. And I think, a lot of the conversations that you're judging earnesty are you really making an effort to do that? Are they being authentic in their efforts to go do that? And that's a subjective conversation. So it's very hard to actually put a pin on, are the efforts there and the results not?
Right.
Or is the effort not there?
Right. Well, and it seems like what we heard from Jason was essentially that if there is a real commitment, a wide commitment, this can change. Like this is changeable in many ways. So one of the things that's interesting about your business, and I read this several places, and you and I have talked about it, is this whole notion of both protecting and enhancing a brand, that literally one of the most valuable brands that's out there. This whole notion of don't tarnish the star. That's what your dad said to you, right? I believe.
Yes.
What does that actually look like day to day? Like, what do you do to ensure that you're meeting that every day?
So just as a little backstory to that comment, when I first came to work with the Cowboys, I was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and my dad had a harebrained idea that he wanted to buy the Dallas Cowboys. And so we went off and did it, and everything was literally on fire during that time, and everything was going wrong. Performance on the field was going wrong. Obviously, financial performance was going wrong. And he just had a passion to be involved with the NFL. And when he asked me to come and be a part of that, you know, my comment was, well, I don't know anything about running an NFL team. And he said, that's okay, neither do I. So we've just got to get in here and figure out how to do it. And in that, I said, well, what would my responsibility be? And he said, first, and at the time, the Dallas Cowboys were losing $75,000 a day, over $1 million a month. The team was 3-13. It was just a disaster, which is why it was actually for sale. So it was an absolute disaster. So his directive was, first, find a way to stop losing money. And the second was, whatever you do, don't tarnish the star. And, you know, I didn't actually really realize what that meant at the time, but I have certainly become more and more aware of it through the years. And this climate today is very much an example of that, of how do you handle this, where you're building an organization and you are trying everything that you can to be successful in all ways. And some things work and most things don't. You stumble. But what do you do in that stumble to protect the brand and then to grow it? And how do you move forward through the challenge and through the mess to build it and to continue to grow it on the other side?
Yeah.
So from our perspective, you know, there were a few things, a few principles that we really wanted to hold on to in every step that we made, because, you know, for me, my job is not the X's and O's. Somebody else does that. But for me, it's about taking what that team, what that organization means, and figuring out ways to grow it and to partner with it and to move us into different areas where we can connect differently with fans and grow that connection. I've always believed that our brand is more of a culture and not actually a brand. It's actually Roy Disney that said that brands are something that you do to cattle, you know, because you can't tell the difference between one cow and another. I'm from Texas, so we talk about cows. So you can't tell the difference between one cow and another, so you stamp your brand on it. Well, for us, we felt like our brand was actually more of a culture, and that it was more of a lifestyle, that we stood for something far greater than the game itself. And if we believed that we were that, then how could we connect with people beyond the game? How could we connect with them in an aspirational context or an inspirational context? Because those are two very different things. How could we meet people in different places that might not be a fan of the football game, but they're a fan of the fight and the effort to go for success and the perseverance and the will that requires that? And so for us over time, it's been about how do you hang on to the value of what the tradition of the Dallas Cowboys means, because you certainly got to respect the tradition of what got you here. You know, we stand on the shoulders of all of those who came before us, with Tom Landry and Bob Lilly and Roger Staubach and Michael Irvin and, you know, Emmitt Smith. I mean, that is who built the foundation of who the Cowboys were. But if we just allowed ourselves to be generational, where granddad takes the granddaughter to the game and they pass on this great generational shared experience, then we become nostalgic. So we have to find ways that we always can remain relevant and be in that space as everyone's individual space grows and changes, because it looks very different for my son today than it looked for me back 30 years ago about what does this game mean to us. In addition to that, our game is about competition. We have to protect the value of the competition. Our game is about entertainment. We know that people spend their last dollar wanting to be a part of something and wanting to be a part of what we actually present. So we need to respect that. We need to own that responsibility to give them and deliver them an experience that they can't get in front of their screen at home.
I do wonder that context for you and for your family of understanding that next generation, because I was actually, as I was understanding your job and some of the things that you do, you guys have really, in many ways, doubled down on this idea of the next generation.
Yeah.
At the facility you have there in Texas, building it around high school football at a time when that's not an obvious strategy.
Yeah.
Candidly, tell me about that decision.
So we have our headquarters is called the Star, and it's a 90-acre complex that exists in Frisco, Texas. And after we finished building the stadium, this became like our next, where are we going to go? Because stadiums, as you all know, we're only there 10 days a year. So we invested $1.3 billion into a venue that we're there 10 days a year. So in that, what happens the other 355 days a year? And how can we actually create another experience that is evergreen, that we become relevant to people all year round, not just during football season? And so in that effort to move and build our headquarters, we looked at the things that we thought were the most challenging aspect to our future. The first, was youth. How do we stay connected to the authentic part of our game? And that authenticity lies in high school football. Because if any of you have played sport at all, you played in high school. And that high school sport is what built community. It wasn't just about you and the game and the final score. It was about the drill team. It was about the band. It was about the hallways. It was about families putting signs up in their yard. It was this huge community that really created what the authenticity of our game is. And if we get beyond that, if we stretch too far beyond where that authentic connection is, we're a business over here, and we're not going to thrive as a business. We have to thrive as a valuable asset to somebody. And so at the Star, we addressed that because our headquarters is the home to high school football in Frisco. So we knew that we had to be inextricably linked to the heart of our game. And sometimes people really need to see the bricks and mortar of something to believe it. And I mean that, many of us in here are probably from different faiths, but our faith is actually anchored by a synagogue or a church or a mosque, and we need that concrete existence to actually grow roots in our faith. So taking that same kind of analogy here is we needed to actually show people that we were connected to high school football. So that was the first part of that. And the other was around health and safety.
Right.
And so we partnered with Baylor, Scott & White with the goal of being the safest place in the country to play sport, all sports. So it was about prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. And in that facility, the mayor shared that vision, the city shared that vision, and we were going to help pilot that vision. So those were kind of the basic founding principles of that, of how do we make sure that we keep that growing, and how do we keep the game of high school football relevant and important.
And so as we start to wrap up here, it's interesting to speak with someone who is very much from a franchise organization, on top. You're the king, you're the queen. You got the Cowboys are at the top of the heap. How much do you worry about? How much do you think about what it takes to stay there and not just from a ranking on some list, but to continue to grow the value of this organization? What do you do for that?
it sure would help if we'd win a ball game. Like, gosh,
Yeah.
all these, I mean, it's been so long since we have sniffed a Super Bowl that it's just, you know, you'd think, oh my gosh, how can we continue to grow in a trajectory and not have the success that our fans want, and that certainly that our players want and that we want. But in that, and I actually think that that has been, you know, part of the secret of that is that we couldn't rely on that success to make who we are relevant. That we had to find other ways for that relevancy, or for people to perceive us as relevant in their life in different ways. And I think that has driven our innovation. It's driven our creativity, and we certainly do things that are kind of out of the box thinking. And again, a lot of them are really great, and many of them are really bad. And we have to, learn quick in that mess and learn from it and move on to a new idea. But that's the challenge. I think we have to be, I don't think anybody should change just to change. I think we have to have a keen awareness of how society is changing, so that you can be on the forefront of changing with society, or empowering a change in society. And those are two very different things. But for us, we look at it pretty holistically from that standpoint.
All right, so we got a minute left. You built a stadium. You built this state-of-the-art facility. What are you, Charlotte, building next? What's the next big project? Can you tell us?
Oh my gosh, that's what I looked at my dad when we were done with the stadium. It's like, we're doing another one? Like,
Right.
Here we go. But I think for us, it's about continuing to deepen the avidity and, again, relevance of who we are with our audience, and trying to understand this new way of communicating. Because you got to remember, when I first came on, we didn't have computers.
Right.
Yes, I'm that old. So we didn't have any computers, and then all of a sudden the rate of change in society went from decades at a time to years at a time to now even months at a time. And so the ability to pivot and grow and visualize where that's going, if I told you what we were doing in the next 5 years, that would probably hold me back.
Yeah.
Because probably the beauty of our organization and having the top influence to be able to Mogate is that we move quickly. And that doesn't take a lot of board meetings to get going and
to figure that out. Well, on behalf of a lot of the sad Cowboy fans in my life, good luck. Good luck on the field. And enjoy the weekend here in LA. Thank you for the time. Nice to see you.
Jason. Thanks, y'all.